The morning shift alarm rang through the mining station like it had every day for the past 15 years. Veltara stretched her long, blue-tinted arms and looked out at the asteroid field through her office window. The Vellani mining colony of Kethmar had been her home for most of her adult life. She loved the quiet peace of space and the gentle hum of the mining equipment. Kang Minho was due to arrive today with supplies from the inner systems. The human trader had been coming to their colony for 3 years now. At first, the Vellani workers had been nervous around him. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy for being loud and unpredictable. But Minho was different. He was quiet and respectful. He never tried to rush their careful business discussions or complained about their slow decision-making process. Veltara checked her morning reports. Everything looked normal. The mining teams were already deep in the asteroids, using their gentle extraction methods to harvest the valuable crystals without damaging the surrounding rock. The Vellani had perfected these techniques over centuries. They believed in taking only what they needed and leaving the rest untouched. Down in Mining Sector 7, Foreman Kethanal guided his team through the daily safety check. The Vellani were naturally cautious beings. They tested every tool twice and examined every tunnel for signs of instability. Their mining equipment was designed to work slowly and safely. Other species often made fun of how long Vellani mining operations took, but they had never lost a worker in an accident. "Today we go deeper than yesterday," Kethanal told his team. "The crystal readings show a rich vein about 50 meters down. We will take our time and follow proper procedures." The team nodded. They had been following the crystal vein for weeks now. Each day they dug a little deeper into the asteroid. The crystals they found were some of the finest quality anyone had seen. The Galactic Council paid very well for these particular crystals because they were essential for faster-than-light communication systems. By mid-morning, the team had set up their equipment and begun the slow process of digging deeper. Their machines hummed quietly as they carefully removed rock and debris. The Vellani workers moved with practiced efficiency, each one knowing exactly what to do. Then Kethanal's scanner began beeping. "Stop the machines," he called out. The workers immediately shut down their equipment. In the sudden silence, they could hear the scanner's rapid beeping more clearly. "What is it?" asked one of the younger workers. Kethanal frowned at his scanner. "There is something down there. Something big. The scanner shows a hollow space about 10 meters below us. This was unusual. Asteroids were supposed to be solid rock and ice. Hollow spaces were rare and often dangerous. They could mean the asteroid was unstable and might collapse. "Should we report this to Veltara?" asked another worker. "Yes," Kethanal said. "But first let me take a closer look." He adjusted his scanner to get a better reading. What he saw made his blood run cold. The hollow space was not natural. It was perfectly round and very large. More importantly, his scanner was detecting metal structures inside it. "This is not possible," he whispered. Kethanal had been mining asteroids for 30 years. He knew what natural formations looked like. This was something else, something that had been built. He immediately called Veltara. "We have a problem in Sector 7, he said. "You need to see this." 20 minutes. Later, Veltara arrived with her technical team. They set up more powerful scanners and began a detailed examination of the area below them. What they found was impossible to explain. "There are structures down there," reported Chief Technician Melvara. "Large structures made of some kind of metal we cannot identify. They appear to be very old." "How old?" Veltara asked. "The metal shows signs of age that suggest millions of years, maybe more." Veltara felt a chill run through her body. The Galactic Council kept careful records of all known civilizations. No species in the galaxy was millions of years old. The oldest known civilization was barely 200,000 years old. "Could this be from before the current galactic civilizations?" she asked. "It is possible," Melvara said. "But if so, we are looking at the discovery of the century, maybe the millennium." The team spent the rest of the day scanning the structures below. They found a complex network of chambers and tunnels that extended far beyond what their equipment could detect. The structures appeared to be some kind of facility, though its purpose was unclear. As evening approached, Veltara made a decision that would change everything. We need to get down there and examine these structures directly. This discovery is too important to ignore. Kethanol looked worried. Are you sure that is wise? We do not know what we might find down there. We are scientists and explorers, Veltara said. This is what we do. But we will be careful. We will go slowly and follow all safety procedures. The next morning, they began carefully digging an access tunnel down to the structures. Their equipment worked slowly but steadily, removing rock and debris while making sure not to damage whatever lay below. It took 3 days to reach the structures. When they finally broke through, they found themselves looking into a vast chamber carved from solid rock. The walls were covered with metal, panels that still gleamed despite their incredible age. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, symbols that no one recognized. The air is breathable, reported the team's scientist after running tests. Whatever atmosphere was here originally has been replaced by something we can survive in. Veltara was the first to step into the chamber. Her footsteps echoed strangely in the vast space. The metal walls seemed to absorb sound in an unnatural way. She felt a strange sensation, as if something was watching her, but she saw nothing. Set up lights and scanning equipment, she ordered. I want to document everything we find here. The team worked quickly to illuminate the chamber. What they saw took their breath away. The chamber was enormous, easily large enough to hold their entire mining station. The walls were covered with intricate patterns and symbols. In the center of the chamber stood a series of tall, cylindrical structures that looked like some kind of machinery. What do you think those are? Kethanol asked, pointing at the cylinders. I am not sure, Veltara replied. But they appear to be some kind of storage or containment units. As they moved closer to examine the cylinders, their scanning equipment began detecting energy readings. The structures were not completely dead. Something inside them was still active after millions of years. This is incredible, breathed Melvara. The technology here is far beyond anything we understand. These power systems have been running for millions of years without maintenance. That was when they heard the sound. It started as a low humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then it changed, becoming something that was not quite music and not quite speech. The sound seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. Do you hear that? Whispered one of the younger workers. They all heard it. The sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It made them want to move closer to the cylinders, but it also filled them with a deep sense of dread. We should leave, Kethanol said suddenly. We should leave now. But it was too late. The cylinders were beginning to glow. A soft, pulsing light emanated from within them, growing brighter with each pulse. The sound in their minds grew louder and more insistent. Veltara tried to order her team to retreat, but she found she could not speak. The sound had taken control of her vocal cords. She could only watch in horror as the light from the cylinders grew brighter and brighter. Then the first cylinder cracked. A thin line of darkness appeared along its length, spreading quickly until the entire structure split open. What emerged from inside was like nothing any of them had ever seen. It was tall and thin, with too many joints in its arms and legs. Its skin was black as space, and where its face should have been, there was only a swirling void. The creature looked directly at Veltara, and she felt her mind begin to fracture. Images flooded her consciousness. Millions of worlds burning, entire civilizations screaming as they were consumed, and always the hunger, the endless hunger that could never be satisfied. One by one, her team members began to scream. Then they began to change. The younger worker who had first heard the sound fell to his knees as his skin began to turn black. His eyes rolled back until only white showed, and then even that began to darken. When he stood up again, he was no longer Villani. He was something else, something hungry. Kethanol tried to run, but the transformed worker caught him before he could reach the tunnel entrance. The last thing Veltara saw before her own transformation began was Kethanol's face as the darkness took him. Far above, in the mining station's communication center, an automated system detected the loss of contact with the mining team. Standard. Procedure required sending a rescue team to investigate. But when the rescue team arrived at Sector 7, they found only empty tunnels and the sound of something moving in the darkness below. The station's emergency protocols activated automatically. All mining operations were suspended. Emergency. Barriers were activated to seal off the affected sectors, and most importantly, a distress signal was prepared and transmitted on all available frequencies. The message was simple and desperate. Kethmar mining station to any ship in range. We have lost contact with multiple mining teams. Yun. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called within 6 hours of receiving the distress signal from Kethmar. Representatives from 43 different species gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a mixture of sounds that the universal translator struggled to convert into coherent speech. Ambassador Yoon Tai-hyung sat quietly in the human delegation area, listening to the growing debate around him. He had been humanity's representative to the Council for 5 years now, and he had grown used to being ignored during most discussions. Humans were still considered newcomers to galactic society, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 200 years ago. Most of the other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The session was being led by Prime Counselor Thexani of the Korthak Empire. The Korthak were a proud warrior species who valued honor and strength above all else. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with thick armored skin and 4 powerful arms. Their society was built around concepts of honorable combat and protecting the weak. The situation on Kethmar is clearly serious, Thexani announced, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. The Villani are peaceful beings who pose no threat to anyone. If they are calling for military assistance, then they must be facing something truly dangerous. Murmurs of agreement came from around the chamber. The Villani were well liked by most species because of their calm nature and fair business practices. They had never been involved in any conflicts and had no enemies that anyone knew of. However, Thexani continued, we must consider the location of their colony. Kethmar lies within the human territory buffer zone. According to the treaties we signed when humanity joined the Council, that area falls under human protection. This statement caused a much louder reaction from the assembled representatives. The human territory was still a source of tension for many species. When humanity had first achieved faster-than-light travel, they had immediately begun expanding rapidly throughout their local area of the galaxy. Other species had found this expansion aggressive and concerning. Counselor Zilmoth of the Nexari Collective spoke next. The Nexari were beings of pure energy who existed within mechanical bodies. They were considered the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, with computers and artificial intelligence systems far beyond what any other civilization had achieved. The humans are still primitive in many ways, Zilmoth said, their synthetic voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Their technology is crude compared to ours. They still use kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion systems. Are we seriously considering allowing them to handle a situation that might require sophisticated solutions? Ambassador Yoon had heard these criticisms many times before. He remained silent and continued listening. Counselor Ethemia of the Etherian Unity joined the discussion. The Etherians were a psychic species who could communicate through thoughts and emotions rather than spoken words. They were tall and graceful, with pale, translucent skin that seemed to glow with inner light. Our mental scans of human psychology show concerning patterns, Ethemia said, her voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. Humans are naturally aggressive and unpredictable. Their thought processes are chaotic and difficult to read. They have a tendency to resort to violence as their first solution to any problem. More murmurs of agreement came from around the chamber. These were common complaints about humanity that Yoon had heard countless times. Furthermore, Ethemia continued, humans resist our attempts at mental influence. This makes them difficult to guide toward peaceful solutions. They seem to prefer making their own decisions rather than accepting the wisdom of more advanced civilizations. Counselor Mordak of the Hegemony Alliance stood to speak next. The hegemony was made up of several smaller species who had banded together for mutual protection and trade. They were known for their careful, methodical approach to problem-solving. The humans have been members of this council for less than 50 years, Mordak said. In that time, they have been involved in more military conflicts than any other species. They seem to attract violence wherever they go. Perhaps this is not the kind of situation we should trust them to handle. Around the chamber, representatives nodded and voiced their agreement. The human reputation for being involved in conflicts was well established, though most of those conflicts had been defensive in nature. Councillor Yextar of the Trade Federation added his voice to the discussion. The humans also have concerning economic practices. They negotiate aggressively and refuse to accept the traditional methods of conducting business. They want to make decisions quickly, rather than taking the proper time to consider all options. Ambassador Yoon continued to sit quietly, taking notes on his personal device. He had learned that interrupting these discussions usually made them worse. Better to let the other species say what they wanted to say, and then respond when asked. Prime Counselor Thexani raised one of his 4 hands for silence. We have heard many concerns about human capabilities and methods. However, we must also consider the practical aspects of this situation. The Kethmar colony is located several days' travel from the nearest Korthak or Nexari fleets. Our ships could reach them, but not quickly. How long would it take for our fastest ships to reach Kethmar? Asked Counselor Zilmoth. Our analysis shows that the quickest response time would be 8 days for a Nexari fleet, or 10 days for a Korthak force, Thexani replied. Other species would take even longer. That seems acceptable, said Counselor Ethamaya. The Villani are patient beings. They will understand that proper rescue operations take time to organize. This was when Ambassador Yoon finally stood to speak. The chamber gradually fell silent as the representatives noticed the human delegate rising from his seat. Most of them were curious to hear what the human would say, though few expected it to be important. Honored counselors, Yoon began, his voice calm and respectful. I have been listening to your discussion with great interest. You have raised many valid points about human capabilities and methods. He paused and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. However, I feel I should inform you of something that might affect your decision-making process. 3 human ships left for Kethmar approximately 4 hours ago. They should arrive within 2 days. The chamber erupted in shocked voices and angry protests. Representatives began shouting questions and demands for explanations. Prime Counselor Thexani had to use his ceremonial gavel repeatedly to restore order. Ambassador Yoon, Thexani said sternly, please explain this unauthorized action. The Council has not yet decided how to respond to the Kethmar situation. How can human ships already be en route? Yoon remained standing calmly despite the angry faces turned toward him. The ships left under the authority of Admiral Park Ji-won, commanding officer of the Human Defense Fleet. When the distress signal was received, she made the decision to respond immediately. Without Council authorization, demanded Counselor Zilmoth. This is a clear violation of established protocols. With respect, Counselor, Yoon replied. The protocols state that Council authorization is required for major military operations. Admiral Park classified this as a humanitarian rescue mission, which falls under different guidelines. Humanitarian mission or not, said Counselor Ethamaya, the humans had no right to act unilaterally. This kind of behavior is exactly what we have been discussing. They make decisions without considering the wisdom of other species. Yoon nodded politely. You are correct that Admiral Park made this decision independently. However, I should point out that while you have been debating the proper response for the past 6 hours, Admiral Park has been organizing rescue ships, medical teams, and emergency supplies. The proper way to handle these situations is through careful discussion and planning, insisted Counselor Mordak. Rushing into action without understanding the full situation is dangerous and irresponsible. That may be true, Yoon agreed. But the Villani who sent that distress signal are not debating the proper response. They are dying. The chamber fell, silent at this blunt statement. Most of the Council species preferred to discuss problems in abstract terms, rather than focusing on immediate, practical concerns. A holographic communication request indicator appeared above the chamber's main display. Prime Counselor Thexani activated the communication system, and the image of Admiral Park Jiwon appeared before the assembled council. Admiral Park was a stern-looking woman in her 50s, wearing the dark blue uniform of the Human Defense Fleet. She stood on what appeared to be the bridge of a military vessel, with other human officers visible in the background. "Honored counselors," Admiral Park said, bowing slightly in a gesture of respect. "I apologize for interrupting your session, but I wanted to provide an update on the Kethmar situation." "Admiral Park," said Prime Counselor Thexani, "we understand that you have dispatched ships to Kethmar without council authorization. Please explain your actions." "The explanation is simple," Admiral Park replied. "Innocent people sent a distress signal asking for help. We are providing that help. But the proper procedure is to discuss these matters with the council first," protested Counselor Zilmoth. "How do you know that your interview?" Captain Lee Donghyuk stood on the bridge of the HSS Indomitable, watching the sensor readings as they approached the Kethmar system. The human rescue fleet consisted of 3 ships, his own vessel, the medical ship Mercy, and the support vessel, Helping Hand. Unlike the sleek, curved designs favored by other galactic species, human ships were built like flying fortresses. They were blocky, heavily armored, and covered with weapons that other species considered primitive. "Captain," called out Navigator Zhang Minji from her station, "we are detecting the Kethmar mining station on long-range sensors, but something is wrong." "What do you mean wrong?" Lee asked, moving to stand behind her console. "The station is completely dark," Minji replied. "No lights, no communication signals, no signs of life. It looks abandoned." Dr. Kim So-young, the fleet's chief scientist, looked up from her own readings. "That cannot be right. The distress signal indicated there were survivors. Even if the main population was affected, there should be someone left to maintain basic systems." Sergeant Major Choi Won-ho, the leader of the fleet's military forces, frowned at his tactical display. "Could be a trap. Maybe whatever attacked them is waiting for rescue ships to arrive. Or maybe they are all dead," said Chief Engineer Ko Yoonji quietly. The bridge fell silent at this possibility. Everyone had hoped they would arrive in time to help the Villani colonists. The idea that they might be too late was difficult to accept. "We will not know until we get closer," Captain Lee decided. "Maintain course and keep all sensors active. I want to know about any changes the moment they happen." The 3 human ships continued their approach to Kethmar. As they got closer, more details became visible on their sensors. The mining station was indeed dark and silent, floating in space like a dead thing. There were no ships docked at the station, and no signs of activity in the surrounding asteroid field. "Captain," reported Communications Officer Park Ji-hoon, "I am detecting very faint energy readings from the station. Some systems are still running on emergency power, but barely." "Any signs of life?" Lee asked. "Negative. Life support appears to be functioning in some sections, but I am not detecting any movement or communication attempts." Dr. Kim studied her scanner readings more carefully. "There is something strange about the energy signatures coming from the station. They do not match standard Villani technology. Some of the readings are coming from deep inside the asteroids themselves." This caught everyone's attention. Mining stations were built on the surface of asteroids, not deep inside them. "Could the Villani have been mining deeper than usual?" asked Minji. "Possible," Dr. Kim replied. "But these energy readings suggest structures that are much larger than any mining operation would require, and the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Sergeant Major Choi checked his weapon systems. "Recommendation: we should assume hostile presence until proven otherwise. Deploy Marines in full combat gear and maintain battle stations." Captain Lee nodded. "Agreed. All ships, this is Indomitable. Assume combat readiness. Deploy Marines and prepare for possible hostile contact." Throughout the 3 ships, human personnel began preparing for the unknown. Marines checked their weapons and armor. Medical teams prepared emergency treatment facilities. Engineers readied damage control equipment. Unlike other galactic species, humans had learned to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. As they drew closer to the station, More troubling details became visible. The outer hull of the mining facility showed signs of damage, but not from external weapons. Instead, it looked like something had torn through the metal from the inside. "Whatever happened here," observed Chief Engineer Ko, "it started inside the station and worked its way out." "That supports the theory of internal hostile action," said Sergeant Major Choi. "Something got inside and attacked the inhabitants." Dr. Kim was studying the deep energy readings with growing concern. "Captain, I am detecting a network of artificial structures deep within multiple asteroids. These structures appear to be very old, possibly millions of years old." "Millions of years?" Lee repeated. "That predates all known galactic civilizations." "Exactly. But here is the troubling part. These ancient structures are becoming active. Energy levels are increasing throughout the network. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If there were ancient structures in the asteroids and they were becoming active, then the attack on the Villani might be connected to something much larger and more dangerous. "Signal the other ships," Captain Lee ordered. "We need to dock with the station and investigate, but we go in ready for anything." The 3 human ships approached the mining station carefully. Docking was difficult because the station's automated systems were not responding properly. It took skilled piloting to manually connect their ships to the station's docking ports. Once docked, the Marines prepared to board the station. Sergeant Major Choi led the first team, while other teams prepared to follow. Each Marine wore full combat armor and carried weapons that other species considered crude but effective. "Remember," Choi told his teams over the communication system, "we do not know what we are facing. Stay together, watch each other's backs, and report anything unusual immediately." The first team entered the station through the main docking port. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows throughout the corridors, and the air recycling systems were running at minimum power. The station felt cold and empty. "No signs of life," reported Marine Lee Jae-won. "But there are signs of struggle. Furniture is overturned and there are strange marks on the walls." Dr. Kim examined the marks through the team's cameras. "Those do not look like weapon damage. They look like claw marks, but made by something much larger than any known creature." The teams moved deeper into the station, checking each section carefully. They found evidence that people had been living and working here recently. Meals were left half-finished on tables. Personal belongings were scattered around living quarters. But there were no bodies and no survivors. "This is creepy," muttered Marine Nam Yoongi. "It is like everyone just disappeared." In the station's control center, they found more disturbing evidence. The computer logs showed that mining operations had been proceeding normally until 3 days ago. Then the entries became confused and frightened. "Listen to this," said Communications Specialist Song Da-yoon, reading from the computer logs. "Day 1, strange energy readings from deep mining sector. Day 2, lost contact with mining team 7, sending rescue team. Day 3, rescue team reports impossible structures in deep tunnels, requesting immediate evacuation. Day 4, they are coming up from below, sealing blast doors, send help." "And after that?" asked Sergeant Major Choi. "Nothing. The log entries stop completely." Dr. Kim was studying the station's sensor records. "The energy readings from the deep structures show a pattern. They started very low 3 days ago, then increased rapidly. Currently, they are higher than when the station went silent." "Meaning what?" asked Captain Lee over the communication system. "Meaning that whatever is down there is getting stronger." The teams continued their search of the station, but it was clear that all the inhabitants were gone. There were no bodies, no signs of violence beyond the claw marks, and no indication of where the people might have gone. "Captain," reported Sergeant Major Choi, "the station is secure but empty. Whatever happened to the Villani, they are not here anymore." "What about the structures Dr. Kim detected?" Lee asked. "We found the access tunnels that lead down to them. The Villani were definitely digging down there when this happened." Dr. Kim's voice came over the communication system. "Captain, I recommend we investigate those structures. We need to understand what we are dealing with." "Is that safe?" asked Captain Lee. "Probably not. But if these structures are connected to what happened to the Villani, we need to know about it." and if they are becoming more active, we may not have much time. Captain Lee considered the options. His primary mission was to rescue survivors, but there were no survivors to rescue. His secondary mission was to gather information about the threat. The ancient structures clearly represented a threat, but investigating them would put his people at risk. Very well, he decided. But we do this carefully. Small teams only, with full support from the ships, and if anything goes wrong, we evacuate immediately. 2 hours later, a combined team of Marines and scientists descended into the mining tunnels that led to the ancient structures. They followed the path the Villani had carved through the asteroid, their lights cutting through the darkness ahead of them. The tunnels were larger than expected and showed signs of hasty expansion. It was clear that the Villani had been excited about their discovery and had been working quickly to expose more of the structures below. Energy readings are getting stronger, reported Dr. Kim as they descended. Whatever is down here, it is definitely active. The tunnel ended at a massive chamber carved from solid rock. The walls were covered with metal panels that gleamed despite their incredible age. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, symbols that meant nothing to human eyes. This is definitely not Villani construction, observed Marine Huang Nari. This is something else entirely. In the center of the chamber stood a series of tall cylindrical structures. Each one was about 3 meters tall and made of the same unknown metal as the wall pane. The emergency transmission from Captain Lee reached the Galactic Council 12 hours after the human team's encounter with the transformed creatures. The message was brief, but chilling. Ancient hostile entities discovered. Villani population transformed into aggressive creatures. Threat level: Galactic extinction event, requesting immediate council response. Within hours, fleets from 6 different species were racing toward Kethmar. The Korthak dispatched their finest warrior ships. The Nexari sent advanced research, vessels equipped with their most sophisticated technology. The Etherians contributed ships with powerful psychic defense systems, all of them expected to find human ships destroyed, and the threat spreading across nearby systems. Instead, they found something that confused and disturbed them greatly. The human ships were still there, but they were not alone. 3 additional human vessels had arrived, including a massive ship that other species had never seen before. The new ships were even more heavily armed than the original rescue fleet, and they were actively engaged in what appeared to be mining operations. Admiral Park Ji-won was now personally commanding the human response from aboard the heavy cruiser, Determination. When the alien fleets arrived, she transmitted a status report that left the council representatives speechless. Threat assessment complete, Admiral Park reported. Ancient hostile entities confirmed in 17 underground locations throughout the Kethmar system. Entities show capability for rapid reproduction and mental influence. Standard response protocols have been implemented. General An Seojun, commanding the human ground forces, provided additional details. We have successfully contained the entities to their underground locations. Civilian evacuation is complete. Systematic elimination of hostile forces is proceeding ahead of schedule. The alien fleet commanders demanded immediate clarification. How could the humans have assessed and contained a galactic-level threat in less than 2 days? How could they claim to be eliminating entities that had survived for millions of years? Admiral Park's answer was simple. We identified the problem, developed a solution, and implemented it. Standard human military procedure. The reality of what the humans had accomplished was both impressive and terrifying to the other species. Upon discovering the transformed creatures in the underground chambers, the humans had immediately recognized them as an existential threat. While other species might have spent weeks or months studying the entities to understand their nature and capabilities, the humans had taken a different approach. Engineer Ko Yoonji had spent 6 hours analyzing the creature's biology in the ancient containment systems. Her conclusion was direct. The entities were parasitic beings that reproduced by transforming other life forms. The ancient civilizations that had built the containment systems had failed to eliminate them completely, which is why they had eventually been overrun. The mistake the ancients made, Ko explained to her team, was trying to contain these things instead of destroying them. Containment only works if you can maintain it forever. Eventually, all containment systems fail. Based on this analysis, the humans had developed what they called the cleansing protocol. It was a systematic approach to eliminating the entities and preventing their spread. The first phase involved sealing all access points to the underground chambers and flooding them with a mixture of corrosive chemicals and high-temperature plasma. This was designed to destroy both the entities and any biological matter they might use for reproduction. Sergeant Major Choi had led teams of combat engineers in placing explosive charges throughout the tunnel systems. These charges were not designed to simply collapse the tunnels, but to create a series of controlled explosions that would incinerate everything within the underground network. "We are not trying to capture specimens for study," Choi explained to his teams. "We are not trying to communicate with them or understand their culture. We are trying to make sure that every single one of them stops existing." The second phase involved systematic hunting of any entities that had escaped to the surface. Human Marines used thermal imaging and motion sensors to track down the transformed creatures. Their kinetic weapons proved highly effective against the entities, which seemed unable to adapt to physical projectiles moving at high velocity. Dr. Kim So-young had made a crucial discovery about the entities' weaknesses. While they could absorb and redirect energy-based attacks, they had no defense against simple physical force. A tungsten bullet moving at 3 kilometers per second would destroy them just as effectively as it would destroy any other biological target. They evolved to fight civilizations that used energy weapons, Dr. Kim explained. They have no experience with species that still use kinetic projectiles. The third phase was the most controversial. Human scientists had detected energy signatures similar to the Kethmar entities at locations throughout the galaxy. Rather than waiting for these other sites to become active, the humans proposed immediate preemptive strikes. "Every day we wait gives them more time to wake up and spread," argued General An. "We need to hit them while they are still dormant." This aggressive approach shocked the alien fleet commanders. The idea of attacking sites before they had shown hostile activity went against every principle of galactic law and diplomacy. Captain Thex Cole of the Korthak fleet was the first to voice objections. "You cannot simply attack these sites without proof that they pose an immediate threat. What if you are wrong? What if some of them contain valuable archaeological information?" Admiral Park's response was blunt. "Captain, we found evidence at Kethmar that these entities have destroyed at least a dozen galactic civilizations over the past 5 million years. Each time the pattern was the same. Peaceful species discovered them, tried to study them, and were consumed. We are not making that mistake." The alien commanders found the human approach both effective and disturbing. In less than 48 hours, the humans had identified the threat, developed countermeasures, and begun implementing a galaxy-wide solution. Their methods were violent and decisive, but they were also undeniably successful. Commander Zilketh of the Nexari Research Fleet tried to argue for a more scientific approach. "These entities represent an unprecedented opportunity to study ancient alien biology and technology. Destroying them before we can learn from them is wasteful and short-sighted." "Commander," replied Dr. Kim, "we did study them. We learned that they are extremely dangerous, highly infectious, and completely hostile to all other forms of life. That is all we need to know." The Etherian fleet commander, Ethrain, attempted to use psychic influence to encourage the humans toward a more peaceful solution. To her shock, the human minds proved almost completely resistant to her mental suggestions. "Your thoughts are chaotic and difficult to read," she told Admiral Park. "How do you make decisions when your mental processes are so disorganized?" "We think fast and adapt quickly," Admiral Park replied. "Chaos is a feature, not a bug." As the human operations continued, more alien fleets arrived at Kethmar. Each species expected to take control of the situation and apply their own advanced methods to dealing with the threat. Instead, they found that the humans had already solved the problem using methods that seemed primitive but were undeniably effective. The Hegemony Alliance sent their most sophisticated diplomatic team, expecting to negotiate with the entities. They were informed that there were no entities left to negotiate with. The Trade Federation arrived with economic specialists, hoping to find a way to profit from the discovery. They were told that everything of value had been incinerated to prevent contamination. The most disturbing aspect of the human response from the alien perspective was how quickly they had scaled up their operations. Within 3 days of discovering the first entities, human fleets were deploying to 17 different systems throughout the galaxy. Each deployment followed the same pattern. Human ships would arrive, assess the threat, and begin immediate elimination procedures. They did not request permission from local governments. They did not wait for council authorization. They simply acted. "How can you justify these unilateral actions?" demanded Councillor Mordak during an emergency council session. Ambassador Yoon's response was simple. "We can justify them because they work. Every site we have cleared has shown evidence of entity activity. Every site we have not yet reached is showing increasing energy signatures. We are in a race against time, and stopping to ask permission could cost billions of lives." The human methods proved effective in ways that shocked the galactic community. Site after site was successfully cleared of entities. Ancient underground complexes that had existed for millions of years were systematically destroyed, along with any trace of the creatures they had contained. But the most shocking discovery came when human scientists began analyzing the entity, remains in the ancient containment systems. Dr. Shin Yerim, a specialist in xenobiology, made a breakthrough that changed everyone's understanding of galactic history. The entities were not just ancient aliens. They were the remnants of a species that had once ruled the galaxy millions of years ago. These creatures were the apex predators of their era, Dr. Shin reported. They conquered civilization after civilization by transforming their populations into extensions of themselves. The containment. 3 months after the last entity site was cleared, Fleet Admiral Bang Minsu stood before the largest gathering of galactic leaders in recorded history. Representatives from over 200 species had come to the emergency summit on Nexus Prime. The Great Chamber had been expanded twice to accommodate everyone who wanted to attend. The mood in the chamber was different from any previous council session. Gone was the casual dismissal of human capabilities. Gone were the condescending comments about primitive technology and violent tendencies. In their place was something the human race had never experienced from the galactic community. Respect, mixed with a healthy dose of fear. "The final reports are now complete," Admiral Bang announced, his voice carrying clearly through the massive chamber. "We have confirmed the elimination of entity sites in 473 star systems throughout the galaxy. All sites have been sterilized and sealed using new containment protocols that should prevent any possibility of resurgence." The numbers were staggering. In 3 months, human fleets had traveled to nearly 500 star systems, fought battles against ancient horrors, and systematically eliminated a threat that had existed for millions of years. No single species in galactic history had ever mounted such a massive military operation. Dr. Huang Nari, now the galaxy's leading expert on what the humans had termed void spawn, presented her comprehensive analysis of the threat. Her findings painted a picture of galactic history that was both fascinating and terrifying. "Our research has confirmed that the entities we fought were the remnants of a species that ruled the galaxy approximately 5 million years ago," Dr. Huang explained. "They were not builders or creators. They were consumers. Their entire civilization was based on transforming other life forms into extensions of themselves." The chamber was silent as she continued. "We found evidence that they had consumed at least 47 different galactic civilizations. Each time the pattern was the same. They would awaken, spread rapidly through peaceful populations, and transform entire worlds into versions of themselves. Then they would move on to the next target." Councillor Ethemaya of the Etherians spoke up. "Dr. Huang, if these entities were so successful, how were they eventually stopped? What ended their reign?" "They were never stopped," Dr. Huang replied grimly. "They went into hibernation voluntarily. Our analysis suggests that they had consumed all available populations in the galaxy and were waiting for new civilizations to evolve so they could harvest them again." The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Every species present owed their existence to pure chance. If the entity hibernation cycle had been shorter, or if galactic civilization had developed faster, none of them would exist. The containment systems we found were not built by the entities themselves, Dr. Huang continued. They were built by their victims as a final act of desperation. Some unknown species managed to trap the entities in underground chambers before being completely consumed. They left behind automatic systems designed to keep the entities dormant until someone like us could deal with them permanently. Captain Nam Yungi, who had commanded one of the human battle fleets during the cleanup operation, provided details about the military campaign itself. The scope of the operation had been unprecedented in galactic history. We deployed over 300 ships and 50,000 personnel, Captain Nam reported. Each site required different tactics because the entities had adapted to local conditions over millions of years. Some sites contained a few dozen entities, while others held thousands. The alien representatives listened with growing amazement. As Nam described battles fought in the depths of dead worlds, in the asteroid belts of forgotten systems, and in the cores of space stations built by civilizations that had been extinct for millions of years. The human approach proved effective in all cases, Nam continued. Our kinetic weapons, which many of you have criticized as primitive, were the only technology that consistently worked against entity defenses. Our chaotic thought patterns prevented them from taking mental control of our forces, and our aggressive tactics gave them no time to adapt or escape. Counselor Thexani of the Korthok Empire stood to address the chamber. As one of the galaxy's oldest and most respected warrior cultures, his words carried significant weight. I have reviewed the battle reports from every engagement, Thexani said. The human forces fought with a level of effectiveness that I have never seen in my centuries of military service. They adapted to new threats within hours. They improvised solutions to problems that would have taken our strategists weeks to solve. And they never hesitated to sacrifice themselves to protect others. He paused and looked directly at Admiral Bang. The Korthok Empire formally acknowledges that humanity has proven itself to be the most capable military force in the galaxy. We are honored to call you allies. This statement sent waves of shock through the chamber. The proud Korthok had never acknowledged the military superiority of another species. Their formal recognition of human capabilities changed the political landscape of the galaxy instantly. Counselor Zilmoth of the Nexari Collective spoke next. Our analysis of human tactical methods has revealed approaches to problem-solving that we had never considered. The human ability to make rapid decisions with incomplete information appears to be a significant evolutionary advantage when facing unknown threats. Ambassador Song Da-hyun, who had replaced Yoon as humanity's primary representative, stood to respond to these comments. She had been chosen specifically because her background as a former military officer gave her credibility with the alien species who were still adjusting to humanity's new status. Honored counselors, Ambassador Song began, we appreciate your recognition of our efforts. But I want to be clear about something important. We did not choose to become the galaxy's military force. We simply responded to a threat the way humans always respond to threats. She gestured to a holographic display showing images from the cleanup operation. You have called our methods primitive and violent. You have criticized our tendency to act first and think later. You have complained about our refusal to follow established protocols. But when an ancient evil threatened to consume every living being in the galaxy, those same traits saved everyone. The chamber remained silent as Ambassador Song continued. The question now is, what happens next? The immediate threat has been eliminated, but the galaxy has learned that ancient dangers can awaken at any time. How do we prepare for threats we cannot predict or understand? This question had been at the heart of the summit discussions for days. The revelation that the galaxy had been living on borrowed time for millions of years had fundamentally changed how every species viewed their security. Admiral Bang stepped forward again. The human government has developed a proposal for long-term galactic security. We call it the Guardian Protocol. The proposal was ambitious and unprecedented. Humanity was offering to establish a permanent early warning and rapid response system for the entire galaxy. Human ships would patrol the frontier regions, monitor for signs of ancient threats, and respond immediately to any emergency. We will maintain fleets at strategic locations throughout the galaxy, Admiral Bang explained. These fleets will be equipped with the weapons and equipment necessary to deal with entity-level threats. They will operate under standing orders to respond to any distress signal within 72 hours. Counselor Mordak of the Hegemony Alliance raised concerns about this proposal. You are asking us to essentially make humanity the galaxy's police force. How can we be sure that this power will not be abused? Captain Nam answered this objection directly. Because we have already proven that we can be trusted with this responsibility. We could have used our superior military capability to conquer or intimidate other species. Instead, we used it to save them. The debate that followed was unlike any in Council history. Species that had viewed humans as dangerous primitives were now discussing whether to formally recognize humanity as the galaxy's protector. The role reversal was complete and shocking. The Etherian representative Ethrain offered a perspective that many found compelling. The humans have demonstrated abilities that we lack. Their minds are resistant to psychic influence, which makes them immune to many forms of mental attack. Their technology may seem primitive, but it is effective against threats that our advanced systems cannot handle. Most importantly, they have the psychological makeup necessary to fight horrors that would paralyze more peaceful species. Over the course of 3 days, a new galactic order began to emerge. The Council voted to formally establish the Guardian Protocol and to recognize humanity as the primary military force responsible for protecting galactic civilization. The arrangement was not without controversy. Some species worried about human dominance. Others questioned whether a species so young and aggressive could be trusted with such responsibility. But the evidence was overwhelming. When the galaxy had faced its greatest threat in millions of years, only humanity had been capable of responding effectively. The final ceremony was held in the main council chamber, with representatives from every member species in attendance. Admiral Bang accepted the formal charter that established the Guardian fleet as an independent